sponsors. Encouraging, educating, and empowering you into action. This is Warriors Talk with your host, Lady Rochelle.
Hello. Welcome to Warriors Talk with author and founder Lady Rochelle, where we move away from awareness towards action. It's Health and Wellness Monday, and our topic for today is Black women and breast cancer, the urgency to act. We are live on Intellectual Radio. We just heard from the Drive F5 with Roman. Keep it locked right here on Intellectual Radio and allow us to feed your brain. On the last episode of Warriors Talk, Rizal and I discussed healing while dating. Am I ready for love or still broken? You can head over to YouTube and type in Intellectual Radio. Stay connected for any episodes you may have missed. The quote of the day is, "We cannot heal what we don't confront. We cannot change what we don't understand." Warriors Talk is encouraging you to save the date for our 9th annual Survivor Celebration of Reflection Gala. Our Survivor of Reflection Gala is coming up on October the 18th at the Crystal Sky Banquet Hall, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., where we will be celebrating all cancer survivors. You are encouraged to nominate a cancer survivor that you would like to see at our event awarded. We are looking for survivors of the year. We are also looking for individuals who are in battle so that we can award them financially to help bridge the gap while they are fighting. So I encourage you to go to warriorstalk.org for more information. If you are tuned in on any form of social media, please like the show and share the show. Invite someone else in on the show that you feel may benefit from this valuable information. We're so grateful for our sponsor today. We have Pastor Michael Richardson with the Emmanuel Church of God in Christ, who has a special message for us.
Greetings, I am Pastor Michael Richardson.
And I am First Lady Anastasia Richardson from the Emmanuel Christ. We're located at 3058 West Van Buren in Chicago, Illinois. We are building upon a solid foundation.
We're inviting you to join us every Sunday morning on Facebook Live at Emmanuel Kojic at 10:15 Central Standard Time. And you can also view our videos on our YouTube channel at Emmanuel Kojic-MR. Once again, this is Pastor Michael Richardson
and First Lady Anastasia Richardson, and we're from the Emmanuel Church of God in Christ. We are building upon a solid foundation.
My special guest today is definitely not a stranger to Warriors Talk. She is our healthy solution expert with over 20 years experience as a family physician, and she's impacting lives every single day. Hello, Dr. Michelle.
Hello. How are you today?
Good. Excited about the topic.
Yes, something we need to talk about and keep talking about.
Yes, I'm excited about it. I'm nervous about it, but I know that it's something that as African American women, we need to talk about. As a breast cancer survivor, we need to talk about. And the urgency call to act is definitely something that we want to set off the alarm to individuals who are definitely at risk for breast cancer. And we know that right now, African American women, we're at the top of that list.
Yes, because, even though the incidence of breast cancer, can be relatively equal between the races, Black women tend to have more severe disease, more death from their disease. And we just need, and we tend to find the disease later in life. And so we just need to, have a call to action that, as you say, moving from awareness to action, we've got to act on the information that we know.
Some of the statistics can be so alarming when it comes to breast cancer as a whole. 1 in 8 we know will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. And I think for African American women, that number may be a little narrower than that 1 in 8, because when we're diagnosed, we're more than likely diagnosed, like you said, the later stages.
Right. And I know they do a lot of research or looking into why that is. Part of what we know is that we tend to not get our mammograms regularly. And then for people who live in underserved areas with lack of access, which tends to be, for African Americans, we are not getting our mammograms regularly. And we have poor follow-up after a mammogram because of access. And so those things put us more at risk for worsening disease. So, we have lots of which is great now, mobile mammogram units and people who will go into the community for those folks who can't get out, or have transportation issues. That could be urban or rural, to get your mammogram as well.
So I wanted to play a video of Ananda Lewis, who recorded a message in 2020 about delay in mammograms. And many of us who were growing up watching TV back in the day, we seen her in many different phases on TV in our era. And so her face is definitely known, and we can put a face to the disease, especially someone who was in the public eye. And so I just want to play a video of her talking about her breast cancer journey.
I have been fighting to get cancer out of my body for almost 2 years. For a really long time, I have refused mammograms. And that was a mistake. I watched my mom get mammogrammed for 30 years almost. And at the end of that, she had breast cancer. And I said, radiation exposure for years, breast cancer. Yeah, I'm going to pass. Thanks anyway. I am stubborn. I'm going to admit that up front. Those of you who know me know that's true. And I stand by that thinking. I stand by the research that shows that an accumulation of radiation in your body can cause cancer. And here comes the but. But what I didn't understand, and what I need you to understand, the reason I'm here telling you my business is because I would have had probably 3 or 4 mammograms by the time they caught it. Instead, I've had to have 2 PET scans so far. Guess how many mammograms worth of radiation a PET scan is? Anyone? 30. So 60 mammograms. You do the math. If I had done the mammograms from the time they were recommended when I turned 40, they would have caught the tumor in my breast years before I caught it through my own breast exam, self-exam, and thermography. And they would have caught it at a place where it was more manageable, where the treatment of it would have been a little easier. It's never easy, but I use that word in comparison to what I'm going through now. Instead, what I'm dealing with is stage 3 breast cancer that is in my lymphs. I need you to get your mammograms. I have been doing 100% alternative and natural protocols and treatments, and I have helped this particular condition not spread like wildfire through my body. That's good news. But it's not gone. And I still have a lot of work to do. And I wish I could go back. I have a 9-year-old I need to be here for. I have no intention on leaving him. I don't want to leave any of my kids. I don't want to leave my friends, my family. Hell, I don't want to leave myself. I like being here. So listen, this is not how this was supposed to go, but I'm just going to keep it real with you like I always do. I need you to share this with the women in your life who may be as stubborn as I was about mammograms. And I need you to tell them that they have to do it. Early detection, especially for breast cancer, changes your outcome. It can save their life.
Thank you for sharing that, because she was so true to herself and honest with her experience. And one of the things that I know you know too is when we go through things, right, we learn for ourselves and we go through those things to share and help others. And so honoring her legacy by sharing that, I appreciate you doing that, because nothing like that personal experience to really touch somebody, right? And sometimes it takes a story that's so personal and heartbreaking to get somebody to move to action. She shared so much in those 5 minutes about what her experience has taught her and can teach others.
I feel like the importance of her voice is shifting, hopefully shifting the culture when it comes to breast cancer and mammograms. And there are so many other things out here, yeah, that you can do. And it's totally up to you what that choice is. Like when you make the decision to do whatever it is, like you have that right to do that.
Yeah.
You have that right.
Yeah. Yeah. And she mentioned a couple of things I want to touch on. Like one was the dose of radiation that you get from a mammogram is very mild compared to CAT scans and PET scans and other things that happen once you're diagnosed, right? And all the things is, that you have to go through. And so I would say for any woman not to let that be a deterrent for you to be the reason you don't get a mammogram is the fear of radiation, right? Because it is minimal. And we know, as you hear all the time, mammograms save lives.
That was going to be my next question, was like, what can we learn from her experience? And you just said it right there. She stressed the importance of getting the mammogram. And although she somehow concluded that her mom getting mammograms over the 30 years, and then her mom ended up getting breast cancer, in her mind, she's like, oh, this mammograms cause her to have breast cancer. So I'm not going to do that because I don't want to get breast cancer. And
Right. And whether there is a genetic component to her mom or her cancer, I can't speak to that. We know that only 10% of breast cancers are really genetic. There's so many factors, right? We can talk about that too, right? Part of it's genetics, part of it is are you obese, and do you have other risk factors, and do you smoke and drink alcohol, and all these other environmental things that maybe together with some genetics and some risk factors make that cancer come about. But yes, there's a lot to unpack from what she said there in thinking back on any of her regrets about not getting her mammogram or being diagnosed later than she may have been if she had gotten those mammograms. We talked about that in the beginning, right? That delaying your mammogram increases the risk of you getting a later stage diagnosis. And even though we have great treatments now for all stages of cancer, it's always best if to diagnose that cancer earlier in its infancy.
yeah, I was thinking about her son. She made that video when she was 9, and her son was 14 when she passed not too long ago. So just having to think about leaving behind her kids, like, and then she said if she had to do it differently, hindsight.
And there are different motivating factors for why people do or don't do something, right? When we talk about moving to action, we think about that. We think about ourselves. We think about, she said, I don't want to leave my family, my friends, right? Herself, she enjoys, life. And so we think about those things when we make decisions. And again, listening to her story, hopefully will move some women to action. We know since she passed last week that she's been in the news a lot, and people are sharing these videos, from the past and recent, so we can learn and take something away from her story.
So we can conclude that Black women are more likely to die from breast cancer because we get diagnosed in the later stages, and we get diagnosed when we do get diagnosed. Normally, it's a more aggressive form of breast cancer.
Yeah, two things there. Yeah, and then we didn't talk about once we. Right. So we tend to get diagnosed later. We tend to have more aggressive disease. And also the younger women who get diagnosed, right, tend to have more aggressive disease than the seniors that get diagnosed with cancer. And another reason for, because we used to think that breast cancer was that older person's disease, right? You got to be in your 60s and 70s, but we all probably know someone, right, who was diagnosed 40 or less with their cancer and can tend to have that triple negative breast cancer that can be more difficult to treat. So those are two things. And then the other piece is, once you're diagnosed, are you getting the best right treatment, right? Are you asking questions when you go to the doctor? Are you making sure that you are following up regularly, that you believe and you say, like, trust what your providers are telling you? And are you getting the best treatment possible? And so all of that affects what kind of treatment, right? So social and economic status, we talked about. Are you getting the best treatment? Are you getting to your treatments? All of those social determinants of health play a part. We know there can be some provider bias, right? So are providers offering Black women all the treatment options, including clinical trials, right? Depending on what stage they are. And so that's why it's important we always talk about in your show, to advocate for yourself, to go into your doctor's office with questions, with things you've thought about when you're not in the office that you want asked, right? Ask about clinical trials, ask about whether your insurance allows you second opinions. A lot of insurance companies will allow you a second opinion virtual, so you don't even have to go there. Your doctor sends them your records. Mayo does that, Cleveland Clinic does that, other local hospitals can offer you a second opinion as well. And so we talked also about, having lack of insurance and distrust of the medical community and what we're offering, like Ananda said, was this radiation, causing the disease that she developed.
You said a lot in that. I just want to encourage women to don't feel like you cannot get treated or you can't get a mammogram because you don't have insurance or lack of insurance. There are organizations out here. I think here in Chicago is Equal Hope, an organization that will help you, walk you through it to get a mammogram. They also will have transportation that will take you to and from your appointments. So there are organizations out here that have the resources, that are willing and able to help, so that it could take some of that burden and that stress off of you, and you can go ahead and take action and do what you need to do. So I would look into that. If you don't have insurance, or if you feel like your insurance is not covering the things that you need, then reach out to Equal Hope to see how they can assist you in getting those things done. When it comes to the mistrust of like the medical the medical system, I feel like you should be with a care team, a medical team, to get you through that treatment, especially if you've been diagnosed. You don't want to be with people that you don't trust, people that you don't feel confident in what they're saying. And if you don't feel confident in what they're saying, more than likely you may not do what it is that they're recommending. You may half do it because you don't trust them. So don't feel like you don't have the option to reach out and look for another provider that's going to give you exactly what it is that you need. I would say take the time to evaluate the one that you're with first to make sure that you are a good fit, and you're not just upset because you got that breast cancer diagnosis and now you don't want to be bothered with this doctor. So take your time and really evaluate the situation, and just take a step back, interview the doctor and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I was diagnosed with this. I'm looking for this type of care. Are you able to provide that? And so that whenever you go to the doctor, you don't have this, you're not tense. You're not, oh my God, what's going to happen? The doctor's always dismissive. Like, you want it to be a pleasant experience so that you can walk away feeling informed. You got your questions asked. You feel empowered about your health. You feel like this person is a partner with you, and you're not just sitting here like they're just dictating to you what to do. So, I mean, that
Yes,
trust is important.
yes. So true, so true. Because I'll tell you, I mean, they've done surveys and things and studies on the provider-patient relationship, and not just with cancer, with any disease that we treat. If the patient does not feel that they have a good communicative relationship with their doctor listens to their concerns, they are less likely to be compliant, to follow through, from simply taking their blood pressure meds to finishing antibiotics to finishing a cancer treatment, right? And so you said a lot there, in that if you don't feel that connection with your provider team, if you don't feel they're really listening to what you and your concerns are, you are well within your right to find the right relationship provider for you, because that's really going to help you to feel more comfortable speaking symptoms, anything that's going on with you, and not just listening to what they're saying, but you also have to tell them how you feel. And so that is so important, Rochelle, that they feel comfortable with their team and not feel any mistrust or distrust in that relationship.
You mentioned women who like are under 40 or like right at that 40 age range. For many of them, like those women may have the dense breasts, and a lot of times they may not be getting the proper screening. Like, what are some alternatives or to the traditional mammogram that exists for those people that have dense breasts?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are MRIs of the breast. It's not an MRI of your breast is not a traditional screening test, right? So, some people, if they get their mammogram and that mammogram shows that they have dense breast tissue, sometimes they will follow that up with either an ultrasound or an MRI of the breast to get a better picture of what's going on. Because when your breast tissue is dense, sometimes you can miss things, right? You can miss tiny little spots on a traditional mammogram. They have these they call 3D mammograms now that even get better pictures of the breast tissue. And so, and actually mammograms are so good at detection that, in the old days, women would complain that they hurt a lot, that they didn't want to go get them because their friend told them it was so uncomfortable or painful, right? And if you've had a mammogram, it's not painful. And so I, again, encourage them to get that screening mammogram. At age 40, we usually will start recommending that. Earlier, if you have a family history or other risk factors, depending on your race, for Asian, for Jewish, certain Jewish populations, they may get a mammogram sooner. For Black women, depending on your family history, if you've had a first degree relative with breast cancer, if your mom or a first or sister had ovarian cancer, that might increase your risk. You would get a mammogram sooner. But definitely there's different options, right? You start with your screening mammogram for sure. Depending on that result, we may ask for additional testing, MRIs, ultrasounds, biopsies, things like that, for proper diagnosis.
And definitely, if you're doing your own breast self exams and you discover something may not be normal, especially if you're doing them every month, excuse me, I would say make sure you reach out to your doctor. Don't just wait and say, "Oh, I'm not at that age yet to where I may, you know, have to get diagnosed." No, just bring it up. It may not be anything at all, but it's still worth contacting a doctor to see if they're able to maybe get you in there and do a clinical exam themselves. Or, like Dr. Michelle said, if you have a family history, then you should be able to get testing done.
Yeah, and the important thing about self breast exams, before, we used to say you could just do that for your screening, or women would say, well, I do my self breast exams and I don't feel anything, so I don't really need a mammogram. That's not true, right? We certainly do your self breast exams because you may feel something. It's good to know your breasts, what lumps are there, what's new, but it doesn't take the place of getting your screening mammogram on an annual basis. That's sort of in addition to, right? Because things may come up before your mammogram is due. If you feel something new, definitely, as you said, bring it to your provider's attention. Let them do an exam. If your mammogram was normal 6 months ago, but now you feel a lump and you're like, oh, well, I just had my mammogram and I'm not due for 6 months. But if it's a new lump, bring it to your doctor's attention, right? If it could be anything, doesn't mean it's cancer. It could be a cyst. It could be what we call a fibroadenoma, which is just fibrous tissue in the breast. But have your doctor take a look at it.
And sometimes breast cancer doesn't present itself as a lump. I think sometimes people, they do the breast exams and like, I'm okay. And then they go and get a mammogram and the mammogram is able to pick up something. It's like, wait a minute, but I didn't feel a lump.
That's right. Yeah, majority of cancers that can be picked up by a mammogram are too tiny to be felt with a self exam, and so sometimes by the time you feel the lump, right, it's been there a while. And so again, that's not what we want to use for screening. That's sort of in addition, that's extra, that's on top of you getting your screening mammogram yearly, that you can do those self breast exams, because things can change. And for women who are still having menstrual cycles, right, depending on the time of the month, breasts can become more lumpy, more tender. And so, again, it's good to know what is normal for your breast versus a new lump that never was there before. That especially we're more concerned about non-tender lumps than tender lumps. Tender lumps tend to be benign and sort of hormonal, not always. We never say 100%, but tender lumps tend to be maybe a cyst or something else, where non-tender lumps can make a doctor more concerned that something is going on.
So is there a role that the hormonal imbalances play, like maybe environmental toxins may play, especially in the community of color?
Yeah, I mean, we think the expression of breast cancer in your body is so multifactorial, right? There are pollutants and chemicals. So when we think about the things we can do for prevention and lowering your risk, right? We talk about try not to eat a lot of red meat and animal fats, because that's bad. The toxins that are in those meats are bad for us. We think that they can help promote, cancer cell growth. So we talk about what can you do to prevent and decrease your risk. It's things like that, like trying to eliminate your exposure to certain toxins. Even things like making sure you wear sunscreen when you go out. It's finally hot here, and we finally are getting some sun. But we think that for African Americans, we tend to, oh, I don't need that sunscreen, right? I've got all the melanin to protect me, right? Well, that's some protection, but we all should still be wearing sunscreen so that we don't cause any damage to the cells in our bodies. Um, Cutting down your alcohol intake, cutting down your red meat and fatty intake, reducing your sugar. I was doing on the American Cancer Society website, they have a breast cancer risk assessment. And as I was doing it, it asked for age and it asked for, what do you eat? Do you eat enough vegetables? How much? Do you exercise? How much alcohol do you drink? And after that assessment, it gave me some great things like, oh yeah, you're doing really good with because I I think I drink 1 to 3 sugary drinks a week. I said, oh, you're doing really good with that, but try to cut that down. And so that's a great assessment that anyone can take to sort of look at and answer it honestly, because it will give you feedback to say, oh, well, these are the things that you're doing that may be increasing your risk. And here are the things that you can do to decrease your risk that are exposing. It said, make sure that you wear your sunscreen. We think vitamin D and calcium, make sure you're getting your vitamin D and your calcium, because that can help prevent your breast cancer, decrease your breast cancer risk as well.
What about stress? Because I know stress plays a major role.
Yeah, one of the questions on the assessment was not necessarily about stress, but about how much sleep we get, right? We tend to not get enough sleep, maybe because we're stressed, we're overworked, we're doing a million multitasking things, and our brain is going and going. And so, stress definitely plays a role as well in getting enough sleep. Restorative sleep is important. As well to decrease your risk. We talk about these things all the time on your show. Lifestyle, lifestyle, lifestyle.
And lifestyle is something I think people get discouraged because you feel like this should be something that's happening immediately. You should see immediate results, and a lot of times it's something that happens over time. If you're exercising, a lot of times you won't see the results of it until weeks later, and you may not notice it first. Other people may notice it, and then you notice it. So I think we get discouraged sometimes because we may be implementing these things and not seeing like immediate results.
Right. Yeah. And if you're exercising not necessarily for weight loss, but for cardiovascular health to lower your immune, activity in your body, to calm your system, right? That's walking. I'm walking more with my dog. So that's nothing I'm gonna see results, right? But I know that I'm doing something good so that hopefully, I am decreasing my risk of all these other things that we're talking about: cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. You may not see that, and that's hard to sort of maintain, right? When you're not seeing the immediate results of it. But you have to know for yourself that these are the good things that you're doing for your body. It starts not at 40, 50, or 60. We talk about this too. It starts when you're a kid, when you're a child, and the habits that we're teaching our own kids, our own children.
Yes, I try to get the girls to let's go for a walk with me, exercise with me, even the eating part when it comes to eating because they know I don't eat meat, so we try to have healthy options for them to eat because they do eat meat. And it starts right now with them being young so that as they get older, these are habits that they will take with them, and you won't be trying to get healthy. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah. And, traditionally in our culture, we didn't have the best diet for a multitude of reasons that go back, right, generations, in what we eat and how we cooked our food and what was available and what was cheap in those communities. And so now that we in our generation sort of know better and we're learning, the great news is that we're teaching our kids, right? There are great things about the fact that we have the internet and social media and all these things that we can, like we're doing, we can share good information to our community in their homes, right? And so we're hoping that we turn that tide, especially when we're talking about cancer, that we turn the tide of saying Black women are getting diagnosed later. I look forward to when we can stop saying that, right? Because the resources are there, but we want our community to act on them, right? Like you said, you don't need to have insurance to get a mammogram. You don't need a referral to get a mammogram. We want, these mobile mammogram units. When you hear about them, when you see them, sometimes they come out more in the month of October, but they're around all the time, right? Use that as the time to get your mammogram free, without insurance, so that we can stop having to say that we get diagnosed later in life.
Absolutely. Because I think when you hear that and you're African American, you're just like, well, what's the point? We're going to get
Right.
diagnosed later anyway. So I might as well just live my life. And if it happens, it happens. And I heard Ananda say on a video that breast cancer was like a lottery ticket. Like, your odds are getting it. You play the lottery. How many people win?
Right, right. It's chance. It's, you just don't know, right? Will you win? Will you get this disease? But there are things that you can do, right, to hopefully decrease your risk. Or if you get that lottery ticket of breast cancer, I hate to put it that way, that you are armed with the knowledge and the tools take it on, right? As you always say, to fight, to be a warrior, to know the things that you need to do. What tools do I need to pick up to fight this thing, right? Some of the tools is, yeah, I got to get chemo, and I've got to stay hydrated, and I've got to get, radiation and surgery. And these are the tools that we have to fight and to help you to live longer. And knowing that those things are available, and not fearing those things, when we talk about chemo and how toxic it can be, right? And if you've seen someone go through chemo, it might make someone else say, I don't ever want to do that, right? But as I used to tell patients all the time, I said, listen, denial does not cure anything. So being in denial and saying, I don't want to get a mammogram because I don't want to know, is not going to help.
Absolutely. And I was one of those people when when I was told I had to do chemo, I was like, well, this is the last thing that I would ever want to do, is to have these toxins put in my body. But when I tell you that God preserved me, the one thing that I asked God to do is, since you allowed it, I'm asking that you preserve me, preserve my body through it. And Doc Michelle, I was able to work the whole time. I took off Fridays for chemo because, chemo is not like an hour in, hour out, so I took off Fridays for my chemo. It was from February through the end of June. And after every chemo, I was either at the mall with my mom, or we were somewhere out eating. And then that Friday night, I was out dancing. So,
Yeah.
and that was my therapy to help
Yeah.
me to release some of the stress from chemo. But God preserved me through it all. And I was hospitalized once because my hemoglobin was low and I had to get a blood transfusion.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, when I got it, I left out of there like a new woman, and I was up and out and just back at it. And the water, yes, I was hydrating myself, and the exercise. I remember the doctor coming in and asking, like, are you exercising? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm walking every day. Like, it's a track by my house, and I walk even though I'm fatigued and I really don't have the strength. I still got out there and I walk. Yeah, there were some days when my body felt heavy and I couldn't even move my body. But for the days that I could, I was able to do it. And I'm just grateful that God just preserved me through it. So if you have to go through it, just know that there are people who've been through it, who have gotten through it. They are still here today. And if they could do it, you could do it as well.
Yes, yes. And thank goodness and thank God for your show that continues to be a support, and not just the show, but everything you do around breast cancer to educate, to promote awareness, to show those, those survivors and those warriors that they matter. All of that is so important. And you're doing awesome work with that, because when people are going through it, right, they need the whole team of support around them, and that is so important. So it's good to know that, with you and your program, that's available. But yeah, we want people to be aware, but we also want them to be sure to move and get your mammogram. If you're listening and it's been over a year since you had your mammogram, and you know that you're past due, after this show is over, okay, put it on your calendar tomorrow that you are calling to schedule your mammogram. Again, you don't even need to, depending on your insurance, and you don't even need insurance. You can do a self-referral for mammograms. You can call up your local institution, wherever you get your mammograms, and say, I'm due and I would like to schedule my mammogram, and they'll do it. They may ask who your doctor is, so they have to send those results to that person, but you don't need a referral for that. So move on that as you talk about moving from awareness to action. That's what we want people to do tomorrow, is to get on the phone, schedule their mammogram, and think about, that for not just themselves, but those people that love them.
Yes. I wanted to really quickly, you mentioned clinical trials, and you mentioned having to do like the chemo, the radiation, and the surgery. There are clinical trials out here that you may not have to do those things, or you may have to do the clinical trial in conjunction with the regular, they call it the Western treatment. But don't sleep on clinical trials, because a lot of times when medicine is being created, we're not present. Black people are not present. And so a lot of times it don't work for us. And we're like, this is not working for us. Yeah, because we were not present in the clinical trials when they were, you know, doing the medicine and doing the trial for individuals to see how it works in our body, to see if it would even work for us. So don't think that you have to go with the traditional Western medicine. Look into clinical trials. There may be something there for you, and you may just qualify for it.
Yeah, and the website clinicaltrials.gov, you can go on there, you plug in the type of cancer, your state. It will tell you what's going on in your state. And you can get information yourself, or you can at least ask your provider. You know, some providers, if they're not a cancer doc, they may not be that familiar with clinical trials, how to enroll you in a clinical trial, all of that. Hopefully your cancer team would be familiar with that. But certainly, again, there's things that you can do yourself to do some research, to look into what is available in your state at Northwestern, University of Chicago. Any of those big institutions can be doing clinical trials, and we tend to not be offered clinical trials as much when you talk about those provider bias. And that's why we always talk about being your own advocate. Sometimes you have to do your own research. You know, if ask your family members to help you, right? If you're not internet savvy, if you're older, but look into all of those options as well.
Well, you gave so many words of wisdom. So if you have anything else that you want to add to this conversation, Dr. Michelle, about Black women and breast cancer and an urgency to act, this will be the time to do it so that individuals know what type of action they need to take.
Yeah, thank you, Rochelle. I mean, really, we touched on so much. I was really moved by Ananda's video in the beginning of the show on her experience and what she learned going through the process, and understanding that getting her mammogram may have allowed her to get diagnosed earlier in her journey, which may have changed the trajectory of her disease. And so I want people to learn from her experience and from the experience that you had and others around us, to say, I am going to be proactive and I'm going to act in my own health journey. If I am due for my mammogram, I'm going to move and do that, and not let fear stop you from doing that, right? No one wants the diagnosis of cancer, no one. But if that is your journey, let's get that diagnosis early so that we can do what we need to do to keep you healthy. We have so many great breast cancer treatment options now, that that is the wonderful thing, that breast cancer research is ongoing and at the forefront, and that we learn more and more about what we can do for early detection. So that's mammograms, early detection. But the other piece is prevention. What can we do to prevent ourselves from getting cancer? And we always talk about those environmental sort of lifestyle things, right? Cutting down on your alcohol use, increasing your exercise, making sure you're getting at least 7 hours of sleep, making sure that you're cutting down on the animal fats, the red meats, the bacon, the steak, all of the things that add those bad toxins to our body. And so part of it is early detection, and the other part is prevention. And that's what we wanted to talk about and leave you with today.
And how can they stay connected to you, Doc?
Yep. So they can find me on Facebook as Doc Michelle. There on the screen. They can. I'm available for any talks in the community, at your church, education, as always. And they can also reach me through you and your site as well.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate your wisdom.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I will leave you guys with these words of wisdom. We cannot afford to wait. Black women deserve better, better access, better education, and better outcomes. Join me next Monday right here on Intellectual Radio. As always, thank you for tuning in to Warriors Talk with author and founder Lady Rochelle, where we are changing lives one warrior at a time.
Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Warriors Talk with Lady Rochelle. To find out more about Warriors Talk, follow at Warriors Talk, the number 1, on all social media outlets, and Warriors Talk with Lady Rochelle on YouTube. Please join us next week and every Monday evening at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on IntellectualRadio.com for Warriors Talk with Lady Rochelle, where we encourage, educate, and empower you